Hello out there, psychologists. This is going to be the work for Unit 4, Week 2, the last unit before the end of the quarter. Isn't that awesome? Okay, guys, so I just wanted to say before we begin today that I want to say thanks to everybody who logged in October 1st, especially the full-time students, because that's who we're trying to count. And, it's you guys being online and doing your work that, makes it possible for us to be here and serve you, right? So thank you for coming in. Thank you for doing your work. Thank you for logging in. Thank you for allowing us to stay open. It's kind of important. And so let's go to Unit 4. This, like I said, is our last unit. It'll be our last webinar this week and everything. Okay, so last week we were talking about the differences between classical and operant conditioning. So that's what we spent our time with last week. Good job posting into the discussion, conditioning versus free will. We had a lot of pretty interesting stories. I started off with my moose story that if you've been at APS Online for a while, then you've probably heard that story before. But this week we also did conditioning experiments, so we went and researched a famous conditioning experiment, and there's a whole bunch out there, from Pavlov to Skinner to Bandura to Vygotsky there's a whole bunch of different kinds of conditioning experiments you could look for. But we are on week 2, learning theories. And for this week, we're obviously going to watch the webinar, and we're going to learn about a couple of different theories, and we're going to set up our experiments. So I have a couple of examples, like these are examples too of conditioning experiments, but I have one for my kids. I've conditioned my kids, if you can believe that, to respond. So it's basically, let me play it for you here. It's basically a tickle game, right? So I don't know if you'll be able to hear it right now. But when I tickle my kids, they learn that the only way to make it stop is to say Daddy is awesome. So you can see that I've conditioned my kids, and of course, like we were talking about last week, every parent conditions their kids, right? So we're going to talk about that this week in the webinar, and also I have another example of conditioning here where Jim conditions Dwight from The Office, which we'll talk about in the webinar as well. So if you haven't seen The Office, then give that a little look, or even if you have seen The Office, Jim is the person in the office who likes to pull pranks on people, especially Dwight, because Dwight's kind of a jerk, so Jim goes out of his way to make his life, as interesting as possible. And we're going to learn about learning styles in the webinar, and so then you're going to post into the discussion here about learning styles. And the question for the week is going to be, what's your learning style, and how will knowing your style help you learn better? So here's a little learning styles test. You just click into here, and it's like a 10-question quiz maybe, and it's just like a multiple choice thing. And then at the end of it, it'll tell you what your learning style is. So I kind of want to know, what your style is, first of all, and then, now that you know that, how does that affect your ability to learn? If you're a visual learner, what does that mean? If you're an auditory learner, what does that tell you about how you should, go about learning your best? All right, so then we have the discussion we'll be posting into, and then you have to do one of these two things. So let me repeat that. You have to do one of these two things this week. All right. One is going to be conducting your own experiment. The other one is an alternate assignment if for whatever reason you can't do it. So those of you at home, or if you have a medical condition that sort of precludes you from being able to participate in the conditioning experiment, then we have an alternate assignment for you. Okay. So if you have questions about, can I do this experiment or not, make sure you email me or call me or text me or something, and we can talk about whether or not, we can figure out a way for you to do the experiment. But basically, for the conditioning experiment, for those of you who are going to do it, you are going to condition somebody or something. Now, it's really important that you have one of the releases signed. You can print out either in a Word doc or in a PDF, and then have whoever your subject is sign the release form. Okay? The person who signs has to be older than 18. Okay, has to be older than 18 to sign. So if it's somebody younger than 18, you have to get the parent or guardian or whoever is the guardian to sign it. Okay. Okay, so you're going to design an experiment, right? You're going to run an experiment, and then you're going to fill in this particular document here. It's going to load. And you can condition anybody you might want. You can condition teachers, which I think would be the best, right? If you could, if you say something, you can see what the teacher's going to do, right? I think that would be totally awesome, So this is going to end up being our final, okay? So once you've done your experiment, and we'll talk about that in class, like what you want to do, then you're going to fill out, let me try and make this bigger here. You're going to fill out this, here's view, there we go. Let's go up here and make it 150. Then you're going to fill out something like this. Now, if you have Word, you can just download this and sort of, erase this and type in what you're supposed to have, like the title of the experiment. The psychologist performing the experiment, that would be you. The introduction and the purpose of the experiment, if we did this, then this is going to happen because of this reason. So, it's a real easy fill in the blank thing here for your hypothesis. Piece of cake. You'd say, if this happens, then this is going to happen because of this reason, right? So if I wanted to condition my kids by tickling, right, I was going to say, if I tickle my kids, then they will say, Daddy is awesome, because every time I tickle them, I say, you have to say Daddy is awesome to make it stop, right? That would be how it would work. Materials would be, everything you need to complete the experiment. This might be a really short section or a really long section, depending on the experiment. If we're talking about Pavlov's dogs, you needed a bell, some food, and a dog, right? If we're talking about my experiment with my kids, you needed somebody to be the tickler and somebody to be tickled, right? Piece of cake. The methods are like kind of, how you put the whole experiment together and in the order in which it goes, right? So number one, I tickle my kids. Number two, I tell them, you have to say Daddy's awesome to make it stop. Number three, I tickle my kids, and I repeat that a couple of times. And then eventually I tickle my kids and they say, Daddy's awesome, right? So number five is a data section, if applicable. You can talk about how many times you did it and that sort of thing. And then number six is the results. This is the fun part, right? What do you think the data means? And the discussion or analysis, right? The results and the discussion analysis you can combine if you want to into one section. But this is where you talk about, what you think how you think the results went and how you got the data and whether it was successful or not. And then the conclusion talks about, the implications of the experiment. Right? And then if you used any sort of outside references, like if you took an experiment and sort of made your own tweaks to it, then you might want to reference it here. Like you wanted to say something like, if you're training your dog or something like that with the food thing, you can say, well, I started off with Pavlov's experiments, so I want to reference that, right? And you would say, a reference would be, Pavlov's experiments from 1909, right? All right. So since this is the final thing we're going to do, the big culmination of all of the conditioning and learning and all that stuff, sort of sections, this is really important. So this is another, along with the psychological theories test, this is another really important section that you don't want to miss. Okay? All right. Now, if you are unable to do the psychology conditioning experiment, then you click into the alternate assignment down here. And the alternate assignment is basically a little more in-depth analysis of a particular experiment. So you're basically doing the same thing, but you're not actually conducting the experiment. You're gonna, look at somebody else's experiment who they've already done the work, and then you are gonna end up doing the lab write-up, if that makes sense. So it's the same document that we just looked at, right here. The only difference is that you are not actually doing the experiment itself. Does that make sense to everybody? So if you have any questions about how to do this or whether you should do the alternate assignment or the actual assignment, let me know. All right? All right, guys, this is our last week, so let's finish strong. Make sure that you've turned everything in by October 9th. Don't wait till the last day. You want to know your grade, right? And so I will be able to tell you your grade as soon as you turn in all of the last things, and I grade things. So if you want to know your grade on Friday, October 10th, let me know and I'll email you. Okay? We're not going to have a webinar that day, so because it's the work day, it's the end of the quarter. So all I'm doing is just doing grading that day. All right? All right, guys. Have a good week, and I will see you in class and online in the webinar.